Dr. Bill Thorwarth, Chief Executive Officer of the ACR, will now present the CEO report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Vice Speaker, counselors, state chapter leaders, members and guests. It's my true privilege to report on behalf of the staff as the Chief Executive Officer, and my disclosures, as it says, I have no financial disclosures, but I really have to disclose the excitement that I get every day working with our truly dedicated staff and the 1,850 volunteers that are working on your behalf every day. Also, having now heard Dr. Allen's speech, I'll also disclose that he and I did not coordinate in any way in creating this talk. Want to do a couple things today. First is to highlight several of the efforts that have been going on since the 2016 meeting, to recount some ACR leadership and impact in past times of major change and show how that gives us an opportunity to influence healthcare delivery and quality healthcare for our patients going forward. In our strategic plan, we have a financial sustainability goal, and you're going to hear from Dr. Fleischon in just a minute that we had an excellent year. The college remains very, very solvent. The implementation of some projection tools done by our accounting staff have really been very helpful in making sure that we're continuing to do that. Again, in the advocacy and economics, and again, as Jim pointed out, this is an incredibly complex time, and our members expect us to be on top of this. You'll hear full reports from in the economics forum coming up later in the week, and also in the ACRA government relations reports. But I have to say that they really put together an incredibly well-coordinated effort responding to many very challenging circumstances like the 2,204-page macro rule that came out at the end of last year. The education programs of the college continue to flourish. We had a new record attendance with over 1,500 radiologists that have attended the Ed Center in 43 different courses. Those of you who have not attended, I would strongly recommend that you consider that. There are a number of e-learning opportunities that are outlined here for SACME, and again, they're very high quality courses for you. This picture from the AARP demonstrates again, about 95% of residents across the country attend the AARP, and it continues to be a crown jewel in the ACR's educational processes, and we have growing international attendance in each of those programs. The Radiology Leadership Institute, the summit this year is again at Babson College, September 7th through 17th. We're refashioning and restructuring the RLI process in order to have the courses and educational products be according to bands of careers. In other words, foundations for leadership for early career, breakthrough, middle career, and executive for those that have already advanced into leadership positions. Membership, our slogan in the college is that membership is everybody's business, and you'll hear if you call into the college, you'll almost certainly be asked to make sure that you are a member and what can we do to assist you if you're not. The dues, it's really important to remember that 2/3 of your dues go to advocacy and economics. Okay, right off the bat. So if you have partners in your practice that are saying, you know, my dues, I'm not going to join the college because I don't think it's really worthwhile, please use that quote. And the Career Center for the residents and fellows in the group is at an all-time high in activity, and again, I think that reflects the very positive job market that's out there. The Engage platform has been cited earlier. Please take the time to get on that and participate in some of these discussions and hear what your colleagues and fellow members have to say. Also, while here at the meeting, please take time to drop by and do a 30 to 45 second video. We're using this in promotion of our profession to medical students, and we'd love to hear about your experiences and why you're energized about being a radiologist. I've shown this slide many times in the past, I think to the council as well. Again, in the discussion of the value of membership, if you're talking to someone or an eligible board-certified radiologist, medical physicist, or radiation oncologist, again, if they can honestly look themselves in the mirror and say they're not $18 a week better off for what the college is doing on their behalf, then you can understand why they're not a member. In the quality and safety segment of the college, again, we've had a terrific meeting last October, and it's going to be repeated this year, October 13th, 14th. Not the same content, but our quality and safety meeting. And again, if you have time in October in Boston, this is going to be a terrific gathering. There's growing participation in the registries, though I'll show you in a minute. Honestly, I think it should be growing even more quickly. And our first paper from the registries has been published in radiology using 1.3 million CT exams, and again gives you an idea of how future research, as opposed to randomized controls trials, are going to be based on this registry data. And Jim mentioned the RScan program. Again, one more accolade that was one of 4 transforming clinical practice initiatives, and the only support and alignment network grant that was invited to participate in CMS's grand rounds, and my thanks to Greg Nicola, who did that presentation. I'll be able to put FACR after his name after tonight. Again, these are the curves I mentioned as far as the growth in both registration, in other words, practices and radiologists that are registered with the registries, and those that are actively submitting data. And these are good numbers, and you can see the rapid growth, but again, we're still only looking at 10% of our membership, and we've got MACRA and MIPS coming down the pike. So I really think that this is going to grow much more quickly. If you look here at the data from the Qualified Clinical Data Registry, where Medicare is accepting the college's submissions on your behalf, if you're in fact involved in this, you can see there's only 815 even in 2016, though it's been rapidly growing. We're still only talking about less than 1,000 radiologists that are submitting their data through these registries. This has got to increase in order to empower you and your practices to automate this reporting practice as much as possible. Jim talked about the refocusing of the ACR Foundation, and I won't repeat those things, but we really are very pleased now to be talking about health policy research, and I think it very much is distinct and unique to the college as opposed to, say, the R&E Foundation or the Rankin Fund or other foundations. So the Center for Research and Innovation in Philadelphia, the Akron programs have been rapidly accruing cases in the IDEAS study, that is the dementia for Alzheimer's disease with amyloid agents. ECOG Akron has just been awarded $104 million to do the tomosynthesis screening trial, and the RTOG Foundation continues to do great work in the radiation oncology sphere with many presentations and papers resulting. I wanted to talk just a moment about the ECR Innovation Fund, and this was implemented by the Board of Chancellors about a little over a year ago to support untested, uncommon, and distinctive ideas and activities that lead to groundbreaking efforts that align with and support the goals and objectives of the ACR strategic plan. So the concept here is, instead of us building in and making a permanent structure within our budget, we now are able to fund these innovative pilot studies, if you will, and they come out of the ACR's commissions and committees and have a $100,000 maximum, and 11 of these have been approved to date. So let me go through in a brief, and I think this is, I'm aiming these comments largely to the residents and fellows and young physicians, but as we look at the challenges we face today, I wanted to briefly review some of the things that have happened in the past as far as the college's ability to support you and empower the memberships in their practices. So here at Dartmouth in 1896, Eddie McCarthy fell on Ockham Pond and got the first x-ray taken in the United States. But again, as far as the college, Alexis de Tocqueville said that it's in our genes, as far as America's passion is for organizing, and I think the college is a definite representation of us trying to reflect common interest and respond to common problems. The college was started in 1923, and I'm not going to go through the entire history for anyone who feels like I know that's been done, but at that time there were only 100 fellows at $10 a year, and the first convocation then in 1924. Dr. Groover, who was president of the college in 1935, had a very imaging 3.0 quote in his presidential address, and that's that radiology must be a clinical practice, broadly trained physicians, and not just a technical service by plate readers. The Inter-Society Committee that still meets every summer convening all the radiology societies was actually started in 1937 with its intent to, quote, ward off threats from hospitals and new insurance companies. Again, working on behalf of radiologists and making sure that radiology was viewed as a specialty just like surgery or OBGYN. This was folded into the ACR in 1941. But at that time, it was a very different world. Again, 80% of radiologists in the country were in solo practice, either diagnostic or radiation therapy. And 70% had both hospital-based and office-based practices. Of course, in 1965, Medicare was the big clincher. Were radiologists going to be in Medicare Part A, i.e. paid by the hospitals, or were in fact they going to be in Medicare Part B and treated as a medical specialty? And the board chairman, Wallace Buchanan, retained a lobbyist in order to make that fight on behalf of radiology to make sure we stayed as an identified specialty. There was a lot of effort in order to influence the members of Congress, and particularly Wilbur Mills, who chaired the Ways and Means Committee, and other members of the committee. But at the end of the day, the Senate voted to put us in Part A and the House in Part B, which resulted in a conference committee. And luckily enough, Senator Russell Long, his wife, or his mother rather, was being treated by a radiation oncologist, and he and Representative Mills won the day, and in fact, we ended up staying in Part B. So it's really key to understand, as we face that challenge, that the college was able to influence that process. Now let me give you a personal story of exactly how that played out. This is Chestnut Hill Hospital, a suburban Philadelphia hospital that was served by Barden, Thorwarth, Daughtridge, PA, a three-person radiology group that worked as a contract to the hospital on a percentage of gross billings. Well, along comes the Medicare rule, and all of a sudden lightning struck, and somebody threw a wrench in their works because that practice had no experience at all of doing independent billing. They didn't know how to do that and really required some assistance. But they got ACR guidance. The college worked with a reluctant American Hospital Association. They negotiated with insurance companies. They developed a toolkit and actually a movie to assist practices in making this transition. And in fact, at the end of the RSNA meeting that year, had a session attended by over 1,000 radiologists and business managers to learn how to do this. One good example was Dr. Gerald Miller, who was at that time the chairman of the board of the college, and he was the head of the radiology department at Baylor, and at which the president of the American Hospital Association was also working. There was a standoff. Dr. Miller was actually dismissed because of the position the college took. He took another chair position in Dallas, but Baylor soon came over to private billing. And in fact, Barden, Thorwarth, Daughtridge still is a thriving private practice in Philadelphia because of the assistance that the college gave them. One other example is when CPT was created by the AMA in 1966. The college was there engaged in the development, and there have only been 2 years since that was formed in 1966, and that's not true for virtually any other specialty, that we've had a college-nominated radiologist on the CPT editorial panel, currently Dan Pikus. Third challenge. The resource-based RVS that Bib talked about earlier, when this came along with Dr. Shao doing his study at Harvard, the ACR's experience-based RVS was developed under the guidance of Dr. Jim Moorfield, and in the Omnibus Act of 1989, which mandated this resource-based system, the ACR's experience-based relative value scale was incorporated in its entirety. And we now have, of course, great representation at the Relative Value Update Committee with our lead advisor being Kurt Shoppe. And now we get the chance to prove the ACR's value all over again. Again, this is our core purpose, the college's core purpose in our strategic plan to empower members to advance the practice, science, and professions of radiological care. We want to optimize the use of imaging, which we're going to do through the clinical decision support that our government relations people were able to get inserted into the PAMA legislation, and is now going to be mandated, we anticipate, January 1st of 2014, built on the appropriateness criteria that the college under K.K. Wallace initiated all the way back in 1993-94 time period. The MACRA compliance, so there have been over 3 years of work initially by the Alternative Payment Model Task Force and the current MACRA committee, which is, again, going to empower members with the knowledge and the tools in order to be able to deal with the metric requirements that are coming forward with MACRA, whether you be in MIPS or alternative payment models. But why aren't those numbers higher that I mentioned before? This was a cover of the ACR Bulletin last summer. The tidal wave is upon us, so we have to be sure that all radiologists, and you need to go home and convince your practice partners, if you're not doing this actively in your practice now, that accountability is here to stay and it's important to get on board. We can develop these tools, but it really is up to the individual radiologist and practices to implement them. And then we now have artificial intelligence, and the decision that you've heard announced today as far as the Data Science Institute, I think again is going to be an example of how the college is going to lead us through a challenge and in fact bring us out in an even better place afterwards. So to quote Jim Collins in a book I'll recommend, Great by Choice, uncertainty is permanent, chaotic times are normal, and change is accelerating, and instability will characterize the rest of our lives. We best get used to it and let the college be your career-long partner in helping you get through these challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Thorwarth. And now Dr. Howard Fleischon, ACR Secretary-Treasurer, will present the Treasurer's report.